In 1968, a new creation was unveiled on the Northeast Corridor called the TurboTrain. While it was more or less a failure, Amtrak, which was in full swing by the early 1970s, was not about to give up. This time, they went to France, and they brought back the RTG Turboliner, the train that both impressed and disappointed at the same time. Hi, this is Jeffrey, and in my last video, we took a look at the United Aircraft TurboTrain. Now, the TurboTrain did not fare very well in the US. There was a Canadian version that did significantly better. Now, in the 1970s, Amtrak decided not to yet give up on the turbo idea. So in 1973, they brought over a turboliner from France called the RTG, and that's what we're going to look at in this video. What we're going to do is to review an article from 1973 that explains why the turboliner from France was both impressive and disappointing at the same time. So let's get started in reviewing this article from the New York Times from 1973. And here is the article titled Amtrak's French Turbotrain is Acclaimed on American Run by Edward C. Burks, special to the New York Times, dated August 12, 1973. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, August 10th. A gleaming new French turbotrain just acquired by Amtrak made its maiden long-distance test run in the United States today, and senior American railroaders in the cab had an all-smiles verdict. C'est si bon! It is a faster, more powerful second-generation version of the French turbos that have compiled a remarkable record of reliability and on-time performance in the last 3 years. Known as the RTG and designed to run at speeds up to 125 miles an hour, it is the kind of train that Amtrak is counting on to revitalize rail passenger service in the high-density corridors 200 and 300 miles long in the next few years. Amtrak has leased 2 of the new 5-car, 2,280 horsepower RTG turbos for use between Chicago and Milwaukee and Chicago and St. Louis starting this fall. It has an option to buy them as well as 8 more. During a brief stop here today while bound for Chicago, the train, painted white with broad bands of red and blue, offered a sharp contrast to the grimy, dilapidated station. No luxury look. The interior of the train, which has 296 coach seats and space for 24 at tables in the grill bar dining area, is not spectacular. It does not have the luxurious airliner look of the Metroliner or of the American-built United Aircraft Turbotrain. The orange-colored vinyl seats, 2 abreast, are those used in the second-class cars of the train in France. Bob Day, who is in charge of acquiring rolling stock for Amtrak, conceded that the French were disappointed that we didn't buy some luxury first-class cars too, with upholstered 2-and-1 seating. But Amtrak was interested in a single-fare train with maximum seating and reasoned that the coach or second-class seats were roomy, comfortable, and adjustable. Another complaint: the transparent sliding doors between cars and sections are hard to open. But otherwise, the train seemed to attract compliments from veteran American railroaders. It has a smooth ride, and the noise level is remarkably low, much lower, for example, than that of the low-slung, trouble-plagued American-built Turbo. An hour less time. Mr. Day feels that the train could clip an hour from the present 5-hour and 38-minute schedule for the 284-mile Chicago to St. Louis run. William Cruikshank, General Road Foreman of Engines for the Milwaukee Road, one of the lines that will operate the Turbo for Amtrak, has spent several months in France. He was impressed by the RTG, which he operated carrying passengers over 1,500 miles. It's as smooth a ride as any I've ever had. and he has been 30 years in railroading. He gave the French high marks for maintenance and reliability and noted that on the Paris to Bordeaux run, the track was so good that they just set the throttle at 125 miles an hour for hours. The advantage of the RTG, according to Mr. Day, is that it takes curves, accelerates, and stops faster, and of course, it needs no electrification. After an earlier model, the ETG, ran up 5 million miles of reliable service and increased patronage by 25% on the Paris to Cherbourg line, the French began using the more powerful RTG in May on new fast schedules from Lyon to Nantes and from Lyon to Strasbourg. They have 14 of the RTG trains on hand now and have ordered construction of 20 more. Mechanical troubles. Why did the United States have to turn to France for a TurboTrain? Mr. Day explained that the American and Canadian turbos built by United Aircraft have had so many mechanical difficulties that the New York to Boston turbo run is no longer an extra fare charge, and the French trains, costing about $2.7 million, are cheaper, he said, but Amtrak hopes to stir up further competition among builders. Inferior tracks. F.S. King, Amtrak's vice president for operations, one of those aboard today, mentioned a number of other possible turbo corridors if all goes well. Chicago to Detroit, San Diego to Los Angeles, Chicago to Indianapolis, Orlando, Disney World to Miami. Other Amtrak officials talked of high-speed turbos in New York State if they were modified to be able to take electric power in New York City tunnels. And the list included Washington to Richmond, Seattle to Portland, and so on. One of the main difficulties is the condition of American tracks. Jean Flesch, chief test engineer for the research department of the French National Railways, said that he had operated the RTGs at better than 160 miles an hour, but Mr. King noted that 70 is the top allowable speed now between Chicago and St. Louis. Without too much track work, we could cut the schedule by a half an hour and get speeds up to 80, he said. Amtrak has a request before Congress for track rehabilitation funds that could raise speeds in Midwest corridors to 100 miles an hour. Amtrak's new RTG has been held at 50 miles an hour during its break-in run. As part of its re-equipment program, Amtrak has recently put into service 40 new 3,600 horsepower General Motors diesel locomotives on Western passenger trains. Meanwhile, in France, a third-generation turbo, geared for 190 mile-an-hour speeds, is being tested. It could run on a new 262-mile route between Paris and Lyon, scheduled for construction before 1980. This route would be 55 miles shorter than today's overburdened line, and the French would operate 39 to 45 turbos a day in each direction, making most trips in 2 hours at an average of 131 miles an hour, and some in 1 hour 45 minutes. And that's the end of the article. So there you have it, the RTG Turboliner from France. Some things about it were impressive, other things were disappointing. So at most, it was a mixed bag. Now, at first, there was a lot of enthusiasm about it. There were a whole bunch of corridors that they were planning on putting this train on, but most of them just never happened. Now, in my previous video, I mentioned that Amtrak did not buy any turboliners, so that was an error. They actually did purchase all 6 of them. I thought that they had leased them. So Amtrak did own 6 turboliners, and they also built a separate maintenance facility for them, which closed in 1981. Now, in my previous video about the TurboTrain, I really appreciate everyone's great comments about their memories and their recollections of riding the turbo or seeing the turbo, because that's a really great record of a train that was so unique and so unusual. So thank you for all of those great comments on your experience with the TurboTrain, whether it was in the United States or in Canada. So, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look at Amtrak's French RTG Turbo Train. And as always, thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Bye.